we're Christians, as we're going to turn to Ephesians chapter 4, we're going to see that we shouldn't have this mindset. And it's going to make a world of difference when we deal with outsiders, when they see it, we're different. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. I said that Colossians 4 and 6 I maybe needed the most, but maybe this verse too. Ephesians 4 and 29. Keep in mind, as we talked about changing the subject, we talked about changing it to basketball, changing it to things that are more convenient. This verse will help us to keep it on spiritual things. Ephesians 4:29, the Bible says, "Let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for building up according to the need, so that it will give grace to those who hear." So first of all, no unwholesome talk is supposed to come out of our mouth. Like that kid that we had to set aside or someone else did wasn't bad toward me. But even if he was, I couldn't say anything bad about him. When I was a substitute teacher, and this once again is how God works in our lives, I believe. I was substituting, and this kid, like these kids wouldn't be quiet for this one test, okay? When I went to school, when you passed the test out, I mean, you'd get an F if you talked during the test. I mean, you couldn't talk. I don't know how it is out here. I don't know. But anyway, I mean, dead silence, pin drop, like you wouldn't get a drink of water. You couldn't move. You couldn't do nothing. And these kids kept talking, after I passed out a test. I'm like, you kids got to be quiet. And they would like still mumble, murmur. I don't think they were cheating, but still, when you're taking a test, in my mind, you're supposed to be quiet. And so I put my foot down. And I'm like, the last kid or the next kid that says a word is going to the principal's office. And I guess I had gotten really worked up at that point. And he's like, your face is bright red. I'm like, go to the principal's office. And he was like, what? I'm like, go to the And so I continued on, and eventually I said something that maybe I shouldn't have said. And so, you know what ended up happening? And I had just become a Christian about 6 months ago. The principal calls me into the office afterwards. And I got in trouble. Why? Because I let unwholesome talk come out of my mouth just for a moment. Once again, you could watch TV and hear everything that I said, but that kid would not go to the office when I put my foot down. And I felt like I lost control of that class, and I was getting it right at that moment. And he disobeyed. My speech still needed to be seasoned with salt. It still needed to be okay. I was a Christian child of God. They didn't call me anymore. There's consequences when we don't follow God's commands. And so it says, what we're supposed to say, though, is such a word as is good for building up according to the need, and that will give grace to those that will hear. I didn't need to say anything more except go to the principal's office. Nothing more needed to be said. I could have escorted him. I could have given him directions there. But I didn't need to say anything more than that to that child. Didn't matter how bad I thought these kids were being. Doesn't matter how bad we think anyone at any point in our life is treating us. We don't need to lose the mission in this verse. If we're just about building people up and helping them in their relationship with God, about glorifying God, about being a servant and an image of Christ, we can't let our lives turn to something else. Because for those outside people, man, if I had a nickel for every conversation I had where some Christian did them wrong 30, 40, 50 years ago, and they haven't forgiven them, man. So we can't make those mistakes that unfortunately others have made that have discouraged these people from coming to a relationship with God. What's really been a blessing to me recently is people have been affirming to, I think just as members of the church, the people that they had met, they were members of this church, they felt like we're either sincere about God or really nice people, whether you're talking about individuals or people as a whole. And so as you would imagine, these people have way more of a chance coming to know God at a place where the conversation about the church or about individuals is good than a place where people have heard all these bad things about him. So we need to be the light of the world. We need to realize that our speech has to always be that good. And if we're praying beforehand, it'll get better.